Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'd really love that. If you're returning, how you doing? What we're going to talk about today is what's really causing these rolling blackouts, brownouts in the United States. And then we're going to ask ourselves the question on if it's going to get any worse. But I think we all know the answer to that already. So power grids in the U.S. are currently providing a case study of the risks of a mismanaged energy transition. Prematurely closing coal and gas and nuclear power stations risks blackouts. But who knew? Apparently a lot of people knew. I knew this and you knew this. Well, blackouts and brownouts and energy rationing have become far too common in the past few years. The primary cause of the electricity shortages Americans have been experiencing in recent history is a lack of generation capacity. These shortages often happen in the cold of winter or in the heat of summer. And this is due to, in no small part of though, to the premature retirement of dispatchable generation resources like coal, nuclear, natural gas, and the rapid expansion of intermittent resources like wind, solar, onto the bulk power system. So the United States is heading for a reliability crisis. And I don't use the term crises for melodrama, but because it is an accurate description of what we are actually truly facing here. Too many coal and natural gas and nuclear power stations are being mothballed too quickly, and they're threatening security of supply. Operating the electric grid ever closer to the edge by relying on weather-dependent renewables will likely lead to more frequent and more serious disruptions. So, 2/3, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's 2/3 of North America was at risk of energy shortfalls in the high heat. If you remember, not so long ago, when we were all reaching these really crazy heat waves, like here, it was like 117, 118 degrees, and we're like, what the heck? Nobody's AC was able to keep up and stuff like that, okay? Those are the heat waves that I was talking about. In some areas where the elevated risk of short supplies in the event of more extreme summer conditions. Okay, that's what I'm talking about, where it's 115, 116 degrees. Now, low wind and high demand periods could result in energy emergencies. But despite these warnings, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA as we all know them to be, has issued a new power plant emission standard that will effectively dismantle baseload coal and gas capacity by 2030. There's that year again, 2030, right? I know, I don't like it either, but I'll go on. So, and this is much to the discomfort of grid operators across the country, while utilities have announced plans to retire more than 40% of the remaining U.S. coal fleet by when? 2030. Meanwhile, millions of Americans are facing blackout risks right now at this very moment. Texas has been hit particularly hard, but states like California to the Canadian border, they're facing potential power outages as an extended heat wave boosts demand for air conditioning at a time when wind output is very low. Despite large amounts of solar generation, in some states, fossil fuels are actually being relied on to meet this demand. But a combination of outages and premature closures means that there's a lot less of that available than in the past. So this should not be a surprise to any of us. The U.S. is experiencing a very high pressure weather system characterized by sunny, but still, you know what I mean? In Britain, these weather systems in winter pose a problem as they could bring cold temperatures and low wind conditions. But in the summer, they bring heat and low wind conditions. And the common theme here is electricity demand peaking at the same time that wind output is very low. And the problem that this creates are being repeated in the U.S. year after year after year. Now, if you remember back in the year early 2020, the California grid operator used historical weather patterns to calculate a 15% chance. Actually, it was 0.15% chance that the state would experience blackouts during that summer. And then came a heat wave, and then came wildfires, which caused power plants and transmission equipment to just fail. And just as air conditioning use started to soar, leading to some of the state's worst blackouts in the history in decades. So California's increasing reliance on renewable energy exacerbated this problem, and outages increased as the system operator struggled to replace lost solar output at sunset. So the following summer, you have Texas and California, and even in New York, they all urged residents, cut your energy. Just keep the lights on, okay? And rolling blackouts were required in the Pacific Northwest to avoid a full grid failure. And last year, both California and Texas barely managed to avoid rolling outages by begging people to use less electricity. This summer, a widespread heat wave is causing havoc. I mean, it was so terrible here. The past month has seen multiple appeals from the Texas grid operators for businesses and households to cut electricity use. And these appeals are issued when there's a potential for the grid to enter emergency operations, which is another way for saying rolling blackouts. And the only higher alert level is a system-wide emergency, including actual blackouts. So, in every year of this decade, the story has been the same old, same old. One part of the government is pushing to accelerate the energy transition and closure of conventional generation, while others are warning of the dangers, and the grid operators struggle to keep the lights on, literally begging consumers to cut the electricity use just to save the grid. Of course, we could all cut out emissions right away by simply switching everything off. But how inconvenient would that be? It's hardly a realistic approach to energy policy to take. That Americans are willing to tolerate this nonsense is a total mystery. But unless something changes, it's only a matter of time before there are serious grid failures, putting lives at risk, especially for those that are our elders and those that have medical issues that need the electricity to stay on. According to USA Facts, there are more than U.S. deaths due to heat than any other weather-related cause, and the number is growing from 485 in 2000 to 1,714 in 2022. It's no use in trying to prevent deaths from climate change if the actions that you take cause more deaths. I'm sorry, but it's the God honest truth. It's time to ditch the wishful thinking and adopt realistic energy policies that deliver secure energy when needed. By all means, make that energy as clean as possible. But first, make sure it's actually there to begin with. All right, guys, I'm out of here. I'll see you in the next one, okay? You stay safe, you stay positive, you keep prepping, and as always, fear less. Ciao.